I'm very glad to be here tonight. Shield your eyes. Very happy to be here. I was really hoping, and we got some youngsters, because I geared this talk up towards the younger crowd. And what I want to talk about is actually drugs and alcohol. And so I was thinking, I'm going through trying to figure out what I want to talk about. I was trying to think of how does a drug addict or an alcoholic get to be a drug addict or an alcoholic. It takes a long time, you know. I started thinking, where did it start? And so, okay. So I'm going to ask questions, and it's mainly geared towards the younger crowd, and maybe even youngsters. But who knows what the word inhibited means? Who knows what an inhibition is? Yep. Even the older couples can, or older can, go ahead.
To not care.
Well, an inhibition is something that you're born with. Something that, as a small child, you might be shy. That's an inhibition. You might be awkward. You might, let's see here. Let's see what Google says. I've got it already here, but this will help a lot. So, inhibition, a feeling that makes one self-conscious and unable to act in a relaxed or natural way. Now, that's the world's definition of inhibition. So what it does is it gives some examples, like shyness, reserve, coyness, embarrassment, unease, reluctance, discomfort, hesitancy, apprehension, nervousness. Okay. Okay, so that's being inhibited, all those things, shyness. What I'm trying to say here is, is I believe that inhibitions are our first guard. God gives us this gift when we're born. It's our very first defense against the world. The world will tell you, if you have a small child and that child is shy, oh, she's shy, but we're working on it, you know. The world will tell you that you shouldn't be shy, that you shouldn't be apprehensive, that you shouldn't be, Google, that you shouldn't be weary, that you shouldn't be uneasy. Because even the definition, the world's definition of inhibition says unable to act in a relaxed manner. So okay, going to my notes. So what I'm trying to say here is when you're inhibited, when your inhibitions are lowered, all of a sudden things that you wouldn't normally do or you wouldn't want to do or you see your friends doing, they may become acceptable. You may be brave enough to try it. This is for you younger guys, for you younger crowd. You may be brave enough. You may not want to do it at first, or you may know it's wrong. But even after you try it, you're still going to know it's wrong. So things that you normally do become acceptable, and so you would end up trying it. So what does that mean? Does that mean like you're out with your friends one night, and they're good friends, right? And they break out some beers, and you know you shouldn't, or maybe you don't even want to, but you do. And once you have that beer, then any mannerism that you might be, depending on your age or where you're at in life at that time, even if you're wondering something. So let's say you're wondering about boys or boys are wondering about girls, right? So now you're having a beer, you know, now you got this courage, you got this worldly deal that makes you susceptible to these things. So, and this is what I was getting at was when it all started. So like, say you go out one night and you drink some beers and your parents don't know, right? I mean, of course they don't know. Well, one thing, drinking That's a negative. Your parents don't know, that's a negative. But here's the thing. You might go out and you might have some beers, you know what I mean? Or you might try some drugs with the crowd. But you got to go the next day. The next day, you got to wake up. And you got to go through your mind and realize what you did. And you're going to find out you're not okay with it. You're going to find out that you're not okay with it. But now what do you do with it? Now you find out you're not okay with it. You got to deal with it. So you got to go through your head. You know, it takes a long time. But here's the thing, is time will get you over that, but you'll never forget it. For the rest of your life, you will never forget that moment. And God forbid that something bad happens. You know, for example, violence, fights, you know, or you're involved in an accident, driving drunk, or you're pressured into a sexual experience, or you have to take that home and you have to go through it. And it's not like you can tell your parents, especially if something bad happens. It's not like you can run it out to them and say, and this is what happened. So you're going to keep that inside. You're going to keep that a secret and learn and try to figure out how to deal with it. And that's, so, I call that stinking thinking, by the way. And will lead to try, and you know what happens is once you get past that, once you get past this experience, you're willing to try it again. Because now in a worldly sense, you figured out how to get over that and, you know, and deal with it and push it down inside. But what happens is that there's guilt and shame attached to that. And so you're pushing that down too. And that's where it starts, doesn't it? Isn't that where it starts? I mean, right back when we're young. And I know for me, you know, and so I pushed all that down and carried it. And it started way back then because I'd go lie to my parents, you know, and all the experiences that I've had, I'll tell you, 8 out of 10 of them I regretted. I regretted after it was done, and I had to deal with it in my head, and I had to carry it around. I wish I didn't do it. But now I know. Now you know. Now you carry it with you. And every time when you start drinking, or you start trying drugs, and you guys know what gateway is, right? You know, marijuana is a gateway drug. You know why it's a gateway drug? Because it's the easiest drug that you can get, use, and it won't knock you off your feet, it won't hurt you. But what it does is it opens that door. That if I can try this one, then I can drink and get through that too, or move on to something harder, you know? Be susceptible to whatever your friends have, or whatever your friends are doing. You know, maybe nothing goes wrong. So you go out and you try it for the first time and nothing goes wrong. You know, and you get home and there's no questions about it. You got away with it. Still, you got to deal with it. It's in here. And you're going to try it again, especially if nothing goes wrong. So, in alcohol, I'm here to tell you guys, youngsters, young adults, alcohol is a killer. Alcohol is a killer in every fashion. If you get behind the wheel and you've been drinking, then you're a killer. You take people's hands into your lives, you know, and you can't do that. You can't do that. And I know you can't do that because I've done that. And just, well, what? Okay. So, and alcohol leads to violence. It's not just, you know, in fact, every time you use drugs or you drink alcohol, you run the risk of running into violence. They go hand in hand. Nothing ever good comes out of using drugs or drinking alcohol, never. It's always negatives, especially when you're younger, because you've got to move stuff around so much just to get away with it. You know? So when you have your first experience with alcohol or drugs or in a sexual nature, it starts to change you. It starts to change you right away. It changes you here. And if you have to lie or somebody gets hurt or you have to cover up your use, then it changes you here. And it starts to harden your heart. And that's where, when you're very young, that's where it starts. From the very first time. And every time we'll leave a mark. Every time you drink, every time you use drugs, we'll leave a mark on your life. And but say you go out and you drink, a couple times, you drink once, or somebody gets hurt, and you discontinue that behavior. You never continue that behavior again, or ever touch it again for the rest of your life. What happens is you can't get rid of it here. It'll stick with you for the rest of your life, and you will think about it again. Over a period of your life, you will think about that memory. You'll have that memory. And so what I'm saying here is it's best not to have that memory. It's best not to go through these things, because it starts to change you right then. If you never try to change it, because you never. Memory can lead to and have effect on how you feel about yourself. That memory, or the lying, or the cheating, or the moving around and manipulation, whether it's continuous or whether it's sparingly, it changes how you feel about yourself. And if you change how you feel about yourself in a negative fashion, it will hurt you for the rest of your life until you deal with it. Let's see. Okay, so this is kind of touchy, a little bit touchy, only because I'm saying it. So alcohol can lead to sexual behavior pretty much every time. It can, and because it makes you brave, it drops your inhibitions, it makes so you're not uneasy, you're not apprehensive, you're willing. All of a sudden, you're willing. All these things, all these traits that God gave us, that the world tries to beat out of us when we're very young, it stops all that. They all go away right then. So, say you go out and you're drinking with friends, and and as a youngster, you can't drink that much. You get, you'll be defenseless, unconscious. I can't think of the right word. So what if you have sex and you're not coherent? There's the right word. And you're not coherent. And the next day you don't remember. All you know is you had sex. You don't remember if you were even with it, if you were willing, if you were not willing. How do you tell that to your parents? How do you take that out and tell them? You don't. So you push it in, you keep it in. And that's very destructive behavior. It's not only was the behavior itself destructive, but the way you deal with it and the after effects, very destructive. And there it is. So you push it down and in time, you'll get past it. But you'll never deal with it, or if you don't deal with it, then you won't deal with it, and you'll do it again, or it could happen again. This is how secrets are kept. This is how crimes are committed. Because if you're not sure, you can't say nothing. If you're involved and you're not sure, you can't say anything. So you're going to keep that to yourself, and what that does is not only does that hurt you, but that may hurt somebody else, because this could happen to somebody else. And it happens a lot. This happens a lot. So what I'm getting at is this is how the little changes start. We all know what an alcoholic looks like, or a drug addict looks like. A drug addict looks like me. I've been a drug addict all my life, youngsters, since I was 13 years old, and I've never stopped until now. My teeth are gone. I've been to prison 5 times. I've been arrested numerous times, all because of drugs and alcohol, every bit of it, because of drugs and alcohol. Get caught with drugs one time and catch a felony at a young age. They got little programs or whatever, but if you get caught in possession of drugs, you're going to get locked up. You're going to go to jail. And you could be the best kid in the world. You could have straight A's and just be messing around and get caught with drugs. And now you're in the books. Now you're with the state. And that's how it starts. And then it becomes easier every time. It's like hitting somebody. If you hit somebody, it gets easier every time. It will happen again because now you broke that threshold. All my incarceration is because of drugs and alcohol, because I never could get past it. Never wanted to, never tried. Became acceptable to me because after the first time I went to prison, there was nothing after that. But that's where it starts. It starts at your age. It starts by how you handle your lives. You have to remain spotless. You have to keep your virtue intact. You might be the only one out of all your friends that are doing it. And that is the very best you can do. Don't get caught up in drugs. Don't get caught up in alcohol. Every bit of it, everything about it is negative. Everything. From in a worldly sense and in a spiritual sense. So that's all I've got to. I just appreciate it. I appreciate it. And I want you kids to know that respect yourselves, protect yourselves, help a friend when you can, but always, always, always put yourself first. And this is for the parents. There has to be a line of communication, and it has to be trustworthy. If the kids go out and drink, they need to be able to call you. They need to be able to call home, and even though they know there might be some consequences, and there should be, just the simple fact, the honesty ratio of it, and respecting your parents at that level, and your parents respecting the kids at that level, that keeps everybody safe, that keeps the love intact. But it all begins with you. You have to be able to be trusted to protect yourselves. No lies, all honesty all the time. Thank you.
Never really thought about God giving you the natural ability to be shy, that's a good thing. Keeps you out of trouble in some ways, or you're not going to just fall right into it. Very, very well done there, Mr. Jack. Yeah. Young people, he spoke to you guys tonight, and really, there's nothing wrong with you saving yourself for your husband to be when you get married. That is not a bad thing. That is a very good thing. And there's nothing wrong for you to make a commitment to never drink or use drugs. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's a few things in life that I chose not to do, and that's one of them. And I think it's paid dividends for me. I've never drank. I've never smoked a cigarette. Now, I could almost justify drinking by watching all the bubbly stuff, but smoking, I never did see that one. I mean, that was the dumbest looking thing I'd ever seen, really, to be honest with you. You just really back off and look at it and say, what are they doing? This love affair with this thing. But anyway, there's nothing wrong with you making a decision not to do those things. I mean, you're not going to be the majority, you're going to be the minority. But, I would suggest that you find where you are right now and make some choices that, I'm going to save myself for my husband or my wife, and I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to drink, and I'm not going to use drugs. I'm just not going to do it. And that'll be two good choices that you have made in your life that will carry you a long way. Jack just told you every trouble he had in life was tied to drugs and alcohol. And what a life difference that would have been if he'd have left those two out, right? Yeah. And so anyway, thank you for being here tonight. We will see you on Sunday. Thank you for coming.